the first homeless study back in 1987 for the Homeless Coalition. And back then, one of the big issues was lack of affordable housing. So that issue has just continued to grow and worsen, and we've lost units of affordable housing. But let me do my sermon. I'm Bill Woods, by the way, of the Community Issues Committee, and welcome to the Cathedral's long-term forums that are every other Thursday. By the way, Ed, for next 2 weeks from today, we're meant to have the mayor. Mayor Purval is accepted, so come back and you'll be able to ask him some pertinent questions just from this forum today. It's really an honor for me to bring in Josh Spring, a friend and colleague over the years. He's been an able leader, executive director of the Greater Cincinnati Homeless Coalition. And besides doing a great leadership job with all the members of that coalition, all the different services that do the homeless, he's a phenomenally good community organizer, which we really need these days in terms of the affordable housing issue. So he's here today. I'm sure you can get some information about homelessness, but today he's essentially talking about the new initiative that we're trying to get on the ballot for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund that the city set up several years ago, but has been under or less than adequately funded. So I'm going to turn it over to Josh. And by the way, Street Vibes, which is the paper of the Homeless Coalition, Justin Jeffrey, who's in the audience, used to be the editor, has just published its 500th edition. So it's on the, go to your favorite dealer on the corner and get a copy. And see what 500 issues. What year should that be when it started?
It started in 95.
Let's get rid of the arrow in your face.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thanks everybody for being here and allowing me to be here also. I probably will repeat some things that some of you know. I'm going to try to look at the screen and the room. So in our community, just to give some perspective on the lack of housing and the consequences of that. On a daily basis, nearly 90% of families with children who call seeking shelter are turned away. That means almost every family with a child who calls seeking shelter on a given day is turned away. And that is despite the fact that our shelters, our family shelters, are wonderful and work hard and do a great job. The fact is that so many people have lost or are losing their homes in our community that shelters can't keep up. And in fact, shelter was certainly never meant to be the solution to homelessness. Housing is the solution. Oh, thanks. Housing is the solution to homelessness. And so in 2017, the Xavier's Community Building Institute released a report that showed in our county we're short 40,000 affordable homes. 28,000 of those are needed inside of city limits. And for those who may be wondering, affordable means that the household spends no more than 30% of their income to pay for their rent or mortgage and their utilities. And that shortage, the 28,000 short in the city, is actually homes that would be affordable to households at 30% of the area median income or lower, and it's specifically the county's median income. So to put that in some more common sense terms, that would be roughly $18,000 a year or lower. That's where the shortage is. And so in 2018, after a lot of work, we convinced City Council to pass an ordinance that established the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Affordable Housing Trust Funds are mechanisms that have been used for decades in cities across the country, cities and states across the country to set aside money to develop and preserve affordable housing. And so we created that in 2018 with the city. But that fund has never been funded. The Affordable Housing Trust Fund, its technical account number is Fund 439. And if you ask the city to tell you what is in Fund 439 today, they'll have to tell you there's $1,300 in Fund 439. $1,300 that was donated by the Cincinnatus Association. So there's actually no city money in the fund at all. And of recent, we, because of the push that we have done over the last several years, certainly the city, the current administration, and council talk more positively about affordable housing, act more positively about affordable housing. But there still isn't money in the trust fund. And what is really important about the trust fund is that the legislation we passed in 2018 requires that the funding go to where the greatest need is. The dollars that have been talked about of recent by the city, whereas I said we need housing affordable at that lower level, the dollars the city has put into affordable housing recently are not restricted to that lower level. So for example, city dollars could be a part of generating a home that is truly affordable. They could also be a part of generating a home for a household that has an income as high as $100,000 a year and call it affordable, but that's not where the need is at all. So in 2021, when issue 3 did not pass, generally all of the folks that spoke against issue 3 said, we're on board with creating more affordable housing. We're on board with putting money into creating more affordable housing, but they didn't like our funding mechanism. And so since that time, we met with the folks that had opposed issue 3 repeatedly. We met together, we have worked together, and subsequently we identified a different funding source. So in 2020, actually from 1972 to 2020, we paid, the people that live in the city or work in the city paid a 0.3% earnings tax that went to fund public transportation. And in 2020, our total earnings tax rate was 2.1%. So that means all of us paid 2.1% of our earnings to the city. And in 2020, we collectively passed a ballot issue that switched the funding of the bus system from the city to the county. And so it thus eliminated that 0.3%. So our earnings tax rate went from 2.1 down to 1.8%. And so what we are saying is, let's just simply restore our earnings tax, restore that 0.3% that we had in 2020 and had since 1972. Let's just restore it, and this time put it towards affordable housing. That would cost the average family in Cincinnati, average household, about $11 a month. But it would generate between $40 and $50 million every year. And it's money that the city is not collecting today, so it doesn't take from anything else. And it's something that until, as I said, just a couple of years ago, we were paying anyway. And so I'm gonna pull up, I'm gonna share my screen here. Bear with me while I figure that out. Okay. All right, so I'm going to backtrack just a little bit here. Bill said to accomplish this, putting a 0.3% earnings tax into affordable housing, we have to put it on the ballot. We have to amend our city's charter. And so this presentation just walks through kind of the high points of the charter amendment itself. So what's on the screen now are the listed purposes. And so I'll just point out some of them. Of course, the overarching purpose is to develop and preserve affordable housing, specific to folks with lower incomes, to strengthen our neighborhoods. If we have housing that people can afford, there's a greater chance that people can stay in their neighborhoods, and thus prevent displacement, to decrease the number of people experiencing homelessness and housing instability, also to increase the number of affordable homes accessible to people with physical disabilities, and to redress racial inequities in housing and neighborhood access. And then, of course, when you put in local city dollars, it makes it easier to bring in other outside dollars. And so there's probably a lot of good ideas people have had out there to develop housing, but maybe some funding is available, but not enough. And so this can bridge the gap. So as I already stated, the 0.3% earnings tax, which would restore our earnings tax rate to 2.1%. And this slide points out that every other major city in the state of Ohio has a tax rate of 2.5%. So even with restoring the 0.3, we would be the lowest of all the major cities in this state. So here's how the money, the $40 to $50 million that would be generated annually, here's how it could be used. So at least 65% of the funds would go into Fund 439 that I mentioned earlier. And those would be used to preserve and create homes that are affordable at 30% of the median income or lower. And this 30% is referring to what we call, or what HUD calls, the Metropolitan Statistical Area. What you really need to know is at this given time, that's households with an income of about $30,000 a year or less. 65% of the money would have to go there because that's where the greatest need is. Just to add a little bit of perspective to why we would target there. When you looking at census data, if you look at all of the households in the city of Cincinnati, who according to census data are paying more than 30% of their income for their home, whether it be their rent or mortgage. So their home today is unaffordable. 77% of those households have an income of $30,000 a year or less. 77%. And so that's homeowners, that's renters. And so that is clearly where the greatest need is. So 65% has to go there at least. Up to 30% of the funds could be used for the following 4 items. It could be used for a mixture of these, just one of these. And so one is housing affordable at between 30 and 50% of the area median income. So there is some need there, not as significant as the need already mentioned. Also to assist existing homeowners with incomes equal to or less than 80% of the AMI to keep their homes. So folks have worked hard and but may not have the income today to keep up with repairs or keep up with increasing taxes. So this would help people to keep the homes that they own. Also to assist households with becoming homeowners. And then finally, to provide, we might call this direct services, services, more temporary services to households to exit homelessness, to keep their home. This might be, you know, helping out with rent for a little bit of time, for example. And then up to 5% of money could be used to cover administrative costs. That's always the cost that nobody wants to cover. But if you're going to have good outcomes, you have to have good staff running it. And so this would cover up to 5% could cover the cost of making it all work. So once you invest, as a city, we invest this money into housing that's affordable. It's important that we protect our investment. One, because we don't want people moved out of their homes. We don't want companies or developers to develop housing using city dollars and then, you know, flip it to something else. We don't want that. We also want the housing to last for generations to come. And so we're following a model that's been used in other cities that for rental housing that's created with these dollars, the housing would have to remain affordable at the same rate for at least 30 years. But when the property is, if it's sold or transferred to another entity, that 30 years starts over. And so the new entity commits to 30 years. And that would be protected with the deed of the property. And if there were any mortgage involved, it would be protected there as well. Also, in instances where a multifamily property, an apartment building, where half or more of the apartments have been supported by funds, then at any sale or transfer of the property, the tenants of the building would have the first right of refusal to purchase the property. And these dollars could assist them with purchasing the property. The city would have the second right of refusal. And so that is another measure to try to maintain the affordability. For homeowners, with homeownership, you have to strike a balance. You want to maintain the affordability, but you also want people to have, households to have the ability to gain some equity from the home that they own. So the home would have to, the families would have to stay in the home for at least 5 years. If they were to leave before that, the money would need to be repaid. And then beyond that, it'd really be up to the city to employ any of a variety of methods that try to balance the long-term affordability versus, you know, individual and family equity. Okay, so you know, I'm gonna talk about what's on this next slide that you can't see, so that the things I'm saying now make sense. Yeah.
You can see it real well, but it's not, but they can't see
Oh.
it here.
Well, that's unfortunate.
If you move yours.
Maybe I can move this thing. Okay.
That's good. And that doesn't affect you.
So in terms of the administration of these dollars, the city would administer the dollars. They could decide, if they wanted to contract out the administration of the dollars to another party. But all of the responsibility in the end comes back to the city. And as a part of that, there would be an affordable housing trust fund board, and this board would have be more of an advisory board. So it would have between 9 and 11 members, all appointed by City Council. There are some minimum requirements. So people who've live in housing that is restricted by income, people who've experienced homelessness, nonprofit and for-profit developers and lenders, for example, have to be represented on the board. But there would also be some discretion that council would have to fill some other seats. And so that body would provide input and guidance for the implementation. One of this is how it applies to this slide. One of those would be that the city, in consultation with the board, would set a minimum number of units created, homes created, that have to be accessible by people with disabilities, accessible or visitable. In case visitable is a new term for you, that means that someone who has physical limitations may not be able to reside in the space, but could visit and get around. And so that would be, they would set a minimum requirement. And then really important is this top statement here: programs funded by the trust fund would have a priority to serve members of protected classes that have historically experienced discrimination, such as redlining and displacement, as well as disproportionate rates of eviction. And this is a measure to make the fund be about equity, about racial equity. Twice annually, at least twice annually, there would be a working meeting. So with the board and the advisory board and the staff of the city and the general public, everybody would be invited to come and talk about what's going well, what isn't going well, and what we think the priority should be for the next year. And following the last of those meetings at the end of the year, the city would then publish what the priorities are for the next year of funding. And so again, that's an attempt to try to have the public as involved as much as possible. Okay, so I think I've already talked about this slide. Yeah, and I think that's it. So let me, I'm going to talk just a little bit about some of the, how all of this happens. So to do anything with our earned income tax in the city, we have to amend our charter. The charter limits the earned income tax, and so we have to amend it. And in order to do that, we have to put it on the ballot for the people of the city to vote on. And we have to collect approximately 10,000 signatures to put it on the ballot. So we are going to put this on the November 2023 ballot. And so we have now started collecting signatures on the petition, and we need anybody and everybody to be willing to collect signatures. Before you would start, we do want to offer you a training because there's there's some legal parameters we have to follow when collecting signatures. I've just put in the chat box, and I'll read it off here. Cincy with a Y, Housing for All, is the campaign's website, and so you can go there and you can sign up to collect signatures. Just go to the volunteer page, and then there's a button that says Stay Connected, You can sign up to collect signatures there. And then if you've already been trained, you can come by our office Monday through Friday. We're at 117 East 12th Street. 117 East 12th Street. You can come by our office Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. and you can pick up or drop off petition packets. And our petition packets have, of course, the petition in them. They have a clipboard and they have a folder with a lot of information, including a refresher on instructions of how to collect, some talking points you can use when having conversation with people. And there's voter registration cards in there. So for somebody to sign the petition and their signature to count, they've got to be a registered voter within the city of Cincinnati. And so if an individual isn't registered or they're not sure, or they think maybe their address has changed, we've got voter registration forms in the packet so that you can assist them in filling those out. You bring those back to our office and we'll turn them into the Board of Elections. We will also be, outside of just individuals picking up their packets at our office, we will be announcing a variety of events throughout the city where we'll ask people to come together and collect signatures in certain places or at certain times. And just one more note on the signature collection. You can sign up, please sign up to collect signatures. You can end up collecting just yourself, or if, say, you're part of an organization or a faith community, or at the place that you work or your neighborhood, the building you live in, your block, whatever. We're also looking for what we're calling signature captains. So you might say, hey, I will take responsibility, for my church, and I will train other people to collect signatures at my church, and I will encourage them to get out and do it. Or your block or your neighborhood. So that's also an option. With that said, are there any questions or thoughts? Yes, Alice.
Okay, I hate to bring up disturbing things, but
Yeah.
one of the criticisms last time was that I don't know, some of the unions and construction were not included in the plan, and they kind of objected to it. Has that been solved this time? And then number two, there was some controversy about the advisory committee, and I don't remember what it was.
Yeah. So, thank you. The questions that Alice asked were with issue 3. A number of labor unions came out in opposition. And so what has happened with that? So I'll answer that question first, and then I'll name off the other question. So yes, last time AFL-CIO, AFSCME, and the firefighters union opposed issue 3 because they had been informed by folks at the city that if issue 3 were to pass, that their jobs would be in jeopardy. We of course didn't agree with that assessment, but they were afraid that their jobs would be in jeopardy, and so they opposed it. Since that time, once issue 3 didn't pass, the first groups of people that we met with were the labor unions. And we have been meeting and talking ever since. And this funding source, the earnings tax, does not in any way bring the same thoughts that what was in issue 3 did. And so I think we are, after issue 3, us and the labor folks went back to being friends again. So I think we're good. And then the advisory board. Yes. So last time around, we had it set up such that a variety of nonprofit organizations, mostly membership-based organizations, would nominate people to be on the board, and then the city council would decide who actually is appointed or not, and that the board would be making the decisions about what programs or developments get funded and what doesn't. And so there was a good bit of critique about that. This board is very different. This board is entirely appointed by council, city council, and it is an advisory board. It cannot make decisions. It will just advise the city. So I believe all of those issues have been addressed. There was also some thought the last time that there needed to be some more representation from kind of the lender world. And certainly that's a seat that is required to be on the board, but there's also some open seats that council can fill as they see fit.
Okay, you have a couple questions. Can you catch them? It's Peg Myrtle.
Let's see, Peg Myrtle.
Affordable housing is a regional issue. Why make this a city-only plan? Also, the website does not seem to work.
So yes, affordable housing is certainly a regional issue. It's a nationwide issue and a worldwide issue. The reason that this particular effort is specific to the city is because we have an opportunity. The 0.3% earnings tax, which funded bus system in the past, is no longer in place. And so we have an opportunity to do some good with what we had paid since 1972. And the fact is, this is not the only thing afoot. So we would certainly like to see a funded trust fund at the county level. We would like to see the trust fund that already exists at the state level to be more robust, and the National Housing Trust Fund to be more robust. But we have an enormous need in our city, 28,000 homes of 28,000 homes. In fact, last year in our community, at least 168 people died young because of homelessness. And so we've got to do something here. We just have to.
I checked the website and it's working fine.
Yeah, try the website again. For some reason, when things go in chat on Zoom, it doesn't create a link.
I copied it and went with it.
Yeah, try the site again.
You can see the other questions.
Yeah, let me see. Joy missed the presentation. Did you reach out to the Chamber of Commerce to get their support and buy-in? Is there a tie into the Cincinnati Development Fund and the Fund of Funds? Thanks. We did reach out to the Chamber of Commerce and met with them. They have not told us either way whether they're supportive or not, but we did reach out to them early on and share all of this with them. And then the Cincinnati Development Fund and the Fund of Funds. So I think I referred to this some earlier. There is the Cincinnati Development Fund is a private organization, a good organization who's been integral to the development of affordable housing for decades in our community. And they have a fund that has been referred to as the Fund of Funds. And so there's money from a variety of sources in there, including from the city of Cincinnati. And certainly these dollars could be put into the Fund of Funds. But what would be different about these dollars versus money that is already in the Fund of Funds is that these dollars would have to be used where the greatest need is. So at least 65% of these dollars would have to go to housing affordable at 30% of the median income or lower. And that is not the case for money that is currently in the fund. But there's the two can complement each other and work together. And then I see Peg, if the state tax change that only allows the city to collect income tax from residents who work, here stands the city will not be able to collect tax from people who work in the city but don't live here. Given that, won't that make it difficult to get the commitment to allocate the money for this? Peg, thanks for your question. The answer to your question is actually no. So the the legislative change you're talking about, 0.3% earnings tax generated $50 million a year. But you notice I said it would generate between 40 and 50. That range there is because we do anticipate that the number would be lower because of the legislative change. But this is different from issue 3. Issue 3 required the city to put a minimum of $50 million in every year. There's no minimum dollar amount listed anywhere in this charter amendment. This charter amendment simply says 0.3% earnings tax, regardless of what that is. Now, it will be between 40 and 50 million, but if things really went south and it ended up being 30 million, then that's what it would be. It's 0.3% earnings tax. But the way that you get to the between 40 and 50 is looking at the reports that the UC Economic Center has put out, predicting over the next several years what the decrease will be. Those reports are worth looking at. You can pull it up on their website. They do predict decrease in earnings tax and then some leveling out in some upcoming years. But that's a good, important question and one that lots of people ask. Yeah, Ed.
The 0.3% isn't exactly found money. I mean, a year ago, I think you raised a question with the mayor about what's going to happen when the federal dollars run out from the COVID. And his answer was, we've got a serious budget shortfall. And I specifically mentioned the 0.3%. He said, certainly we'll be looking at that and anything else we can get to. How are the city fathers reacting to your suggestion that the entire 0.3% go to housing?
Yeah, so let me say, we spent most of 2022 communicating with city council because 6 of 9 members of council could put this amendment or similar amendment on the ballot instead of having to collect 10,000 signatures. And so for a period of time, about 7 months out of 2022, we were meeting with 3 to 4 members of council, us, folks in the housing world, folks in labor. We were all meeting every other Monday for months discussing this. And the council members haven't seemed to have the appetite to put this on the ballot. Some of you will notice that recently the mayor created a commission chaired by the CEO of P&G to talk about how the city should do budgeting and to talk about potential shortfalls in the future. We don't know what will come out of that commission. Certainly they could look at earnings tax and even over the next year as we, not year, but several months as we collect signatures. This in no way ends the conversation with council. Council could say, let's find a compromise. That's where we started a year ago, but we haven't been able to reach it yet. But it could happen. But either way, we need to make sure that we have the opportunity to vote on this and to just keep in mind that with restoring the 0.3% earnings tax, our earnings tax rate would go back to 2.1%, which is still 0.4% less than every other major city in the whole state. And so there is room to do what needs to be done.
On the bright side, community organizing on an initiative is tough going, but you've had skills to put together a pretty effective coalition. Can you describe who's supporting and active in the coalition?
Yeah, sure. So Bill asked who's involved in all of this. So let me say the charter amendment itself, lots of people and organizations have been involved in editing it. It's 2 pages long. You know, it originally started at 15 pages. Everybody on this call knows multiple people that have been involved in writing it. We had an event in November, an in-person event, and I believe 50 different organizations sent representatives to it, just to give some perspective. So lots and lots of people and organizations, but to name some specific ones, certainly the Homeless Coalition, we have dozens of member organizations, direct service providers, shelter, soup kitchens, et cetera, that are a part of us. Also, the Affordable Housing Advocates is a part of this effort. The Metropolitan Area Religious Coalition of Cincinnati, the Amos Project, the ACLU of Ohio are all a part of it. The Cincinnati Hamilton County Continuum of Care, the board known as the Homeless Clearinghouse, is a part of this. Caracol is also a part of it, and I could keep listing, but those are some of the groups. And certainly, if your organization would like to be an endorser, you can let us know on the website. Any other questions or concerns? Joy.
I just got back from a conference in DC where Liz Bloom and Tom Carroll and I talked about the Housing Our Future. We talked about the Housing Action Plan.
No.
Can you hear me? No.
No,
Joy, no, you'll have to put the question in the chat box. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
No, we just don't have the technology for this. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Yeah, we'll have to figure that out.
You've arrived at petitions. How do people get involved individually or?
Yeah, so there's a couple ways to get involved. One is go to the website that I listed, Cincy with a Y, housingforall.com, and click either the volunteer button or the stay connected button. They go to the same place, and you can sign up to collect signatures. Once you do that, somebody will reach out to you and offer a way for you to get trained. We need to make sure everybody knows the legalities of collecting so that we do it correctly. And then once you are trained, or if perhaps you already have, we've already done a couple of trainings. So if you're out there and you've already been trained, you can come by the Homeless Coalition office at 101 East 12th, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. to collect petition packets and to turn in petition packets. You can also, as I mentioned before, we have a system of, we have some people that are taking leadership with our signature collections. So if you don't have transportation to get to our office, you can reach out to, through the website, you can reach out to folks leading, and we'll get the packet to you. But the beginning is to sign up there on the website. And then I see Joy's question is here. It seems like we are missing the opportunity to make a difference in the county outside of the city. 2/3 of the people live there, and the suburbanization of poverty is real and getting worse. Concentrating the lowest income in the city is not the answer. The county allocates 25% of ARPA funds to affordable housing. Why not build on that? Thanks, Joy. I think we are building on that, in that there's a link there, in that we need housing in both the city and the county. So right now, this targets the city. And work, as you pointed out, is happening at the county level. And once we get something significant done with the city, we can put even more focus on the county. And just to also point out, some folks do bring up this idea of, do we want mixed income housing and all these sort of things. The trust fund, as described in the petition, it does not require that the money be used to support only whole buildings, right? It could be that you've got a developer who is, a good example is at the corner of Liberty Street and Elm Street and Over the Rhine, where they want to put in lots of very expensive apartments. And we pushed for the city to require affordable housing, which didn't happen. With this funding, the city could require it and financially support it. And that those buildings that say have 100 units of expensive housing could also have 10 units or 20 units of affordable housing mixed in. And so this certainly has the ability to deconcentrate wealth and to create more inclusion throughout our community, throughout our city. And certainly the need, as Joyce has pointed out, we need 28,000 units of affordable housing in the city. We need approximately 12,000 in the county outside of the city. Anybody else? Okay.
Well, this is the start of a real campaign, and we'd like to thank Josh for forming us and getting us started. And,
Do you want to?
yeah,
I'll trade seats with you.
sure.
Do you have petitions for us?
Yeah, well, I handed out the two that I had. Got one that everyone signed.
There you go.
So Josh has done a great job of kicking off this campaign and telling us how we can get involved. Go to that website definitely to get the petitions and get the training. And I think one thing that came up is everybody said, well, there's the county, there's this. There are all sorts of efforts that are simultaneously going on. So this is not just one effort, but this is a major initiative that's very necessary because money has been a shortfall in terms of building affordable housing. So we've got to start somewhere. And we've been urging the city to get on this trust fund since its inception, correct, Josh? So anyway, I thank you very much for kicking off the campaign for us. And I think you've indicated that the religious community in general is very much behind that. Both the Amos Project and Mark are active participants in this. We have a representative from the Catholic Church here to sign petitions. So thank you very much, and we'll keep you posted on this. By the way, the next forum 2 weeks from today is the mayor. So you might want to come armed with some questions for the mayor about the housing issue. So hopefully see some of you all next week or 2 weeks from today. Thank you.